Families ask a lot of their vehicles, but few kinds of car can answer more of those questions than the large MPV. The Sharan is Volkswagen's idea of the ultimate big people carrier, with a variety of seating options and punchy yet economical engines. Sliding side doors enhance access, plus all the seats themselves offer plenty of space and magically disappear when you don't need them. There are more affordable options in this class, but few better ones. Volkswagen wasn't the first maker to popularise people carriers across Europe, but along with partner Ford, they were the first, back in the 90s, to make them palatable. MPVs, it seemed, didn't have to be bus-like to drive. They didn't have to be grudge purchases. Having a family is supposed to be fun. In many respects, owning an original Volkswagen Sharan actually was. But time moves on, and so do the needs of people carrying people. Today, the Sharan is only one of 4 MPVs the German brand offers, and the availability of less expensive Caddy and Touran models that also have 7 seats has pushed it up market, making it bigger and more powerful, which has had to happen at the same time as the car becoming more efficient and less expensive to run. Not an easy brief to meet, but the result of it has been that Volkswagen's defining people carrier is once again more palatable for fast-moving families. It's moved on, but will potential buyers want to move on with it? Let's find out. Bigger though it is, this car is actually about 30 kilograms lighter than its predecessor, a rabbit out of the hat trick which must have occupied some of Wolfsburg's finest brains for many of the 15 years or so that it took them to bring an all-new Sharan model to market. So perhaps we shouldn't be too surprised that it's actually quite an eager thing to drive, even when fitted to an apparently unpromising entry-level 1.4 litre petrol engine. It uses both turbo and supercharging to generate 150 PS, and that's enough to haul 1.75 tonnes along at quite a lick. Rest to 60 takes 10.7 seconds on the way to 122 miles an hour, though frequent use of the 6-speed gearbox is necessary if you were to achieve those kind of figures. More relaxed, predictably, is the 2-litre TDI 140 PS diesel, the version I'm driving here, and the one that most customers will choose. It's refined, and it's got plenty in reserve for short notice overtaking. Rest to 60 takes 10.9 seconds on the way to 121 miles an hour. Its merits are certainly enough to ensure that the 2 more powerful mainstream engine options, a 170 PS 2-litre TDI diesel and a 200 PS 2-litre TSI petrol unit, will remain of minority interest. As usual with Volkswagen Group products, there's a clever 7-speed twin-clutch DSG semi-automatic gearbox for those who want it. Also requiring an extra cost tick of the box is ACC Adaptive Chassis Control, one of those systems that uses dampers at each individual wheel that can individually adjust to improve body control, enhance ride comfort, or try and achieve a workable compromise between the two. The driver can switch out of the normal setting and into sport or comfort modes, which both deliver pretty much what they promise. I found the normal setting work best though, which kind of defeats the object of specifying ACC in the first place. I think if it was me, I'd rather spend the extra money on the improved version of Volkswagen's Park Assist system that you'll find on the options list for this car. This can now not only guide you into parallel spaces, but also those at right angles to the direction of traffic. Neat. The Sharan's extra size isn't immediately obvious at first glance, possibly because family front-end styling borrowed from Volkswagen's compact Golf and Polo models offers the feeling that it's smaller than is actually the case. It's a feeling not supported by the tape measure. A 220mm increase in length means that this car is nearly 5 metres long, plus it's 92mm wider and sits 12mm lower to the ground than its immediate predecessor. All increases which, as you'll find from a seat inside, have been put to very good use. Especially here at the very back. Now, entry is by optionally electrical sliding doors these days, so your kids won't resculpture the bodywork of adjacent cars as they hurl themselves out into the supermarket car park. And access to the third row which is where my kids always want to sit, is also made easier by the easy entry function on the outer seats of the second row, by which the seats tilt and slide forward in a single motion. Once in these rearmost chairs, kids will be delighted to find that they sit a little higher than those ahead, so there's a great view out, while the parents will find that this is one of those unusual things, a 7-seater that 7 fully sized adults can actually fit into. Seats like these in compact MPVs and most 4x4s are usually for kids only, or very uncomplaining and agile adults unfamiliar with the offerings of Colonel Sanders. The original Sharan wasn't much better, but thanks to its extra 75mm of wheelbase, this one's been able to make a real step forward, and the huge glass area around the cabin removes the feeling of claustrophobia that you'd normally expect to find. Second row occupants, whose 3 individual seats can recline for greater comfort on long journeys and slide by up to 160mm backwards and forwards, are even better looked after, with nice features like these picnic trays and the option for parents of these booster seats that pop out of the seat bases when you need them. Business users wanting to spread out a bit have the option of a more palatial 6-seater version. Now, the problem with all these seats in the original Sharan came when you really didn't need them. For the removal van-like capacity promised by that boxy shape, you had to lug all the seats individually out of the vehicle and store them in your garage. Hardly ideal. Today, thanks to the Sharan's Easy Fold seating system, it's all very different. All 5 rearward seats can be folded flat into the floor in single easy movements, instantly freeing up a total of 2,297 litres of total space. And if you need more, then the front seat can fold forward flat, freeing up almost 3 metres of total cabin length. 5 seats in place, there's 711 litres of total cargo room up to the top of the seat backs. But with an easily fitted mesh partition, you can load your Sharan right up to the roof without any safety concerns. And in that case, you'll be able to fit in a total of 1,167 litres of stuff. Travel 7 up, and of course the cargo capacity falls substantially to around 300 litres. But you do get nice touches like hooks for your carrier bags and lashing eyes for awkward loads. Wherever you're seated in this car, there's decent head, leg and shoulder room, but of course the most comfortable perch is to be found behind the wheel, where ample adjustability for both seat and steering wheel mean that it's easy to find the ideal driving position. Now, as you'd expect from this brand and at this price point, it's a classy cabin with lots of soft touch materials and smart switchgear. Now, before we get into this, my advice to families considering a 7-seater MPV would be to make sure that you're comparing like with like. There are, after all, any number of compact MPVs that claim to be 7-seaters when all they really offer are a couple of occasional use unit-sized seats that fold out of the boot floor. The whole idea of paying the extra money for a proper large MPV is that it can properly carry 7 adults anywhere, which partly explains the £23,000 to £30,000 bracket in which this Sharan must sit. Indeed, if you're considering the 2-litre TDI 140 PS diesel that most customers will want, you're looking at prices at or around the £25,000 mark once you've allowed for a few well-chosen extras. And the issue that this kind of pricing will give Volkswagen dealers is most notably the availability of this car's virtually identical design stablemate, Seat's Alhambra, for around £1,500 less model for model. But of course, Volkswagen dealers have a ready answer for that, pointing out that the higher VW residuals will more than make up for that when the time comes to sell. This car's most obvious other contender for your checkbook in the large MPV sector is probably Ford's Galaxy, a more dynamic choice, but like the Seat, not one that will overly protect your investment. Whichever mainstream Sharan model you choose, 1.4 or 2-litre TSI petrol, or 140 or 170 PS versions of this 2-litre TDI diesel, you should find it to be decently equipped. All models get the expected features at this price point things like all-round electric windows, 3-zone electronic climate control, and an 8-speaker CD stereo with DAB digital radio reception and connectivity for your iPod. Nice options include electric power for the doors, the side doors and or the tailgate, a large panoramic glass sunroof, and a neat tow bar that disappears under the rear valance. Safety-wise, there are 7 airbags, including a driver's knee airbag and curtain airbags that run the length of the cabin. You get ESP stability control, the usual braking and traction aids, and a tyre pressure monitor. Fuel economy on all variants, bar the minority interest 2-litre TSI petrol version, is aided across the Sharan range by a standard stop-start system, which cuts the engine when you're waiting in traffic or when you're stopped at the lights, and also by regenerative braking, and these together reduce the workload on the power plants available. Now, the upshot is, in the case, for example, of the 1.4 litre TSI petrol, that you get 39.2 miles to the gallon and 167 grams per kilometre of CO2. The diesel engines that most customers will go for, the 2 litre TDI 140, for example, that I'm driving here, like the 170 PS version, it'll return you about 50 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle on a regular basis. CO2 returns vary between 146 and 153 grams per kilometre, depending on which of the 2 litre diesels you choose. You should also expect the usual sturdy Volkswagen residual values. Eco-friendliness, by the way, isn't just measured in CO2 readings. This Sharan uses an SCR selective catalytic reduction catalytic converter, which, together with the use of a system called AdBlue, it's a synthetic solution that's sprayed onto exhaust gases, significantly reduces nitrous oxide emissions. What else do you need to know? Well, there's a time and distance servicing plan that you can select between, depending on how you're going to use your vehicle, that will cut your servicing costs. There's affordable insurance groupings of between 16 and 21 on the 1 to 50 grouping scale, and there's the usual 3-year warranty. Creeps up on you, doesn't it? The need for this kind of car, I mean. The process that starts with that first wrestling match against an ISOFIX child seat and ends with mum and dad buried beneath a pile of bicycles, nappy bags, footballs and pushchairs, ultimately leads to the purchase of a large MPV. Now, there are, it's true, bigger ones than this Sharan, but they relinquish the rewarding driving experience that this car pioneered at its launch all those years ago. And as I said at the beginning, having a family ought to be fun. Not much chance of that if you're having to lug seats in and out every time you want to go to the dump, or indeed confining poor old granny to a third-row berth so cramped she'll need massaging by the time you get to the garden centre. Which is why, with both these issues at last taken care of, this Volkswagen is such a hard option to ignore in the big people-carrying sector. It isn't inexpensive, but it holds on to its value tenaciously and offers high-tech features to match the advanced engine wear under the bonnet. Bottom line, if you can afford one of these and need to move a large family, then this is one of the classiest ways to get the job done.